but that we plan to record this session. So I've just started the recording, and if you want to revisit it, you'll be able to have a look at the recording, or perhaps you can tell other people about our session who haven't been able to join us today. This is the first time that we've run an online open day, or should I say open hour, from 12 till 1. And we've tried our best to make it run smoothly, but even at the last minute we've had a little bit of technical issues. But if at any point you can't see or hear what's happening in our presentation, then please just write something in the chat box and we'll try to sort it out. But we're also going to have most of these little sessions that we present separately recorded as downloads, and you'll be able to go back and look at them. They're available in the bottom left-hand corner, files to download. You would have been welcomed by Chevelle, who's our communications manager at St Mark's, and she'll be keeping an eye on the chat box for any questions. And we're also going to have a time at the end for questions, so but feel free to put a question in at any time. I'm Jeanette Matthews, and I'm the course advisor for the Bachelor of Theology and the Graduate Diploma of Theology. This is for students in the distance program and also on-campus students at St Mark's. I teach in the Old Testament area and some biblical Hebrew. Now, hopefully you've joined us today because you're interested in studying theology or ministry. You're going to hear a little bit more about our RTO courses in a moment from Andrew Cameron, but let me just say a couple of brief things about studying theology as we begin. The word theology is made up of theos, meaning God, and logos, meaning words or accounts or teachings. So theology is literally the study of God. And we know that we'll never know everything. Our learning is going to be by degrees, and I'll show you in a few minutes a book that we've prepared that relates to that. People who study theology set out on a new journey, and new views are offered along the way. All of us who teach in the school have found it an exciting journey, and we're here because we are passionate about God and faith and inquiry, but most of us have found the journey difficult at times and unsettling, and it's important to be prepared for that. I'll say a bit more about studying theology later, but for the moment I want to hand over to Andrew Cameron. Dr. Andrew Cameron is the director of St Mark's, and this is to just remind us that that we do in St Mark's, we're part of a community that want to support whatever form of study that you're going to do, and he will tell you a little more about St Mark's, but also about the RTO courses. So I'm going to pause mine and hand over to Andrew.
Well, thank you, Jeanette. I'm just going to double check people can hear me. Here I am. Thanks so much for joining us for our online open day. Thanks, Jeanette, for that introduction. My name is Andrew Cameron. I'm the director of St Mark's, but St Mark's has been around a lot longer than I have. It's been in the nation's capital for some 60 years and has always been interested in the study of theology, as Jeanette has said, in ministry vocation, in helping people to find how to serve God and serve communities, and also in public life. The founder of St Mark's had a vision on that you'll hear a little bit more about from Susan, our librarian, a bit later in this hour, and also an excellent library that was actually the beginnings of St Mark's, which again Susan will say more about. There's two sides to what we do here. We have a partnership with Charles Sturt University through which we teach our higher education awards. And I won't say too much about that because our head of school, Dr. David Neville, will say a little bit more about that later. We also have our registered training organisation in the vet sector. As you know, Australia has two ways of doing higher education, and we do both. It's my task to say a little bit more about that. In the first instance, I'll just mention, before moving off the topic of Charles Sturt University, David will mention higher degrees by research, and I'm the higher degree by research coordinator here at St Mark's. So if you have any questions about higher degree by research, I'm the one you'd come to. David will also say a little bit more about life at St Mark's. I hope you do come to visit us and just have a look around one day. We're on this beautiful 6-hectare site, and I've taken up bird watching lately because the birds pretty much own the place and tolerate us. So, just being here for that reason alone is really heartening and refreshing. So, let me say a little bit more about the vet sector offerings at St Mark's. I was hoping to show you these on our website, and that's just having a little bit of a problem at the moment. But so I'll just wing it. But if you want to refer to our website later, you can see all of this in further detail. When you go to the part of the website that says future students or future study, you'll find that mention of those two pathways, CSU and RTO. And in our RTO space, we have a number of offerings that I really like because they're great if you're re-engaging with tertiary education after a long time. A lot of people find it a little bit intimidating to come and do learning as an adult, and we understand that. And one of the great things about vet sector training is that we can be very, very flexible and very adjustable to where you're at, to what you need and to what you feel you're capable of. And so as an example of that, our recently revised Diploma of Christian Ministry and Theology is a 1-year part-time entry-level award in theology offered before you're thinking about doing something like the BTH, which David will mention later. The Diploma of Christian Ministry and Theology gives you an overview of the Bible and of theology and of some really practical skills in church life, such as welcoming people and doing a bit of public speaking and running an event. And people who are doing that are just loving it and finding it extremely helpful for their participation in churches at various levels. We have another one called the Advanced Diploma of Christian Ministry and Theology for people thinking about ordination in the Anglican Church. For many years, St Mark's has taught an absolutely cutting-edge course in personal counselling called the Diploma of Counselling, and it's the sort of sequel to it, the Graduate Diploma of Relationship Counselling. These are courses that we don't offer online by design. We want it to be that, whereas a lot of our other courses can be done online, we want it to be that counselling skills are learnt face-to-face through regular practice, one-on-one, so that you know what it takes to be totally present with the needs of another person in ways that are really helpful for them and that can ease distress both in the short term and the long term. We'll be offering that in many centres. Actually, we'll be offering that in Canberra, Melbourne, Sydney, and New South Wales South Coast. So if you have any interest in that, do be in touch and we can tell you more about those cohorts. Sorry, I meant to say too, on the Diploma of Christian Ministry and Theology, we have two-day intensives in Canberra with that. And if you can find 10 people or more, we're actually happy to travel regionally to offer those intensives too, with the bulk of it being online. The last one I want to tell you about is for mid-career carers, called the Graduate Certificate of Professional Supervision. I've become aware that, particularly for clergy, there isn't a lot of structures in place to care for them really as they go, and this course helps people to help clergy and other carers, other caring professionals, to be kind of scaffolded as professionals. So it teaches you how to be a supervisor to those other carers, and it does that over the course of a year with 8 two-day intensives. And again, we offer that in Melbourne, in Canberra, and in Sydney. I'd love to talk to you about that if you're interested. So that's a little bit of an overview of our RTO offerings. A lot to take in there, so I'll pause there with a bit of good engineering management. We hope that the website will be up later, so maybe I can return later and show that to you on our website. But I'll hand back over to our anchor, and I think next we're going to hear from David Neville about our School of Theology with CSU. Thanks.
Yes, so we're just about to start a little video that David has done. He's very, very busy right at the moment because we're right at the end of session and he has to supervise all the grade sign-offs for all of our subjects. So he wasn't able to be with us live today, but he has prepared a video that talks about the School of Theology and its involvement with CSU.
Hello, my name's David Neville. I'm the head of the School of Theology within Charles Sturt University. I'm based at St. Mark's National Theological Centre in Canberra, and so I'll be talking to you about CSU courses that you can do through St. Mark's either online or on campus. So as far as CSU study option goes in theology, the school offers the full range of courses: undergraduate, postgraduate, and higher degree by research in theology, ministry, pastoral counselling, and ageing and pastoral studies. St. Mark's is a Christian scholarly community that places a premium on exploring our faith heritage for resources to meet current challenges. And all our study is really geared towards that end. Theology isn't that easy. It is hard work, but it's also exciting. But the important thing to remember is that when you study through our school, and especially at St. Mark's, you are studying within a supportive community of learning and exploration. The thing I'd say about all our courses that I'd really like to emphasize is that they are designed within the school but university accredited. And that means that all the study you do is recognized both nationally and internationally as university accredited. Let me talk now about some of the courses that you might like to explore. First of all, our Bachelor of Theology is a 3-year full-time equivalent award, and it is our basic or bread and butter undergraduate course in theology. It features 4 major subdisciplines: biblical studies, church history, systematic theology, and also practical theology. The BTH also serves ordination requirements in both the Anglican and the Uniting Churches. And although the BTH is a 3-year award, there are also 2 early exit points: a Diploma of Theology after completing 8 subjects, and an associate degree in theology after 16 subjects. If you've got an undergraduate award in another area, then perhaps you'd like to explore our graduate diploma in theology, a 1-year full-time equivalent course which provides grounding in the basics of theology with 6 core subjects and 2 electives. If you're not sure you are able to undertake a graduate diploma in theology, in 2018 you might also want to consider the graduate certificate in theology, in which you are only required to do 4 subjects. You get a taste for biblical studies, theology, and an elective subject. And if you decide that theology is for you, that fully articulates into a graduate diploma. Let me turn now to the Master of Theology and the Master of Ministry. Our Master of Theology can be entered from either the Bachelor of Theology or the Graduate Diploma of Theology, depending on your grade point average. Our Master of Theology features 2 streams, either a coursework stream or a research stream. The Master of Ministry can also be entered either from the Bachelor of Theology or the Graduate Diploma of Theology, but some ministry experience is required. and it also has a graduate diploma exit point and allows you to concentrate on various areas of ministry, including chaplaincy, pastoral counselling and the like. At St. Mark's, we also aim to make subjects available in audit mode. If you'd like to dip in and see what it's like to do a subject, you can either do it as a formal audit subject through CSU, or St. Mark's also makes it possible for you to come to class, experience learning alongside others in a classroom setting, and in the first semester of next year, the focal subject will be Introduction to Christian Theology, although there are other subjects available for audit as well. I might mention, while we're talking about other opportunities, that as I'm speaking to you, there is a group from our school undertaking a Reformation Tour. Now, I'm not sure there will be an international study tour option next year, but as a CSU student, that opportunity is open to you. So in the past, well, currently there's a Reformation Tour, currently going through some countries in Europe, but in previous years we've had students attending an archaeological dig in Bethsaida alongside opportunities to visit other places of importance in Israel and the Middle East. Let me speak briefly about life at St. Mark's. We have weekly classes that are live streamed to distant students, so that features the flexibility in which we offer subjects, and for students who aren't able to join in live, those sessions are recorded for them to be able to download later. And that means that on-campus students and students studying online get a sense of being part of a larger community of scholars. Within our school, as I mentioned, CSU students are in a multi-campus school, and for those of you studying at St. Mark's, this would be your local campus. So let me say again that St. Mark's is a community of learning that seeks to plumb the depths of the Christian tradition so as to address today's challenges with both humility and wisdom. Let me turn now to talk about study options at the higher degree by research level. There are 3 such programs. The pinnacle of someone's academic study is the Doctor of Philosophy, and our school has a good track record of attracting and graduating people with PhDs. This year, 10 such PhD students are set to graduate on December the 11th. The Doctor of Ministry is also a higher degree by research award and is also offered through CSU, and the 3rd higher degree by research award is the Master of Theology Research, in which a smaller project of up to 50,000 words is undertaken in one of the sub-disciplines of theology. The first Wednesday of each month at St. Mark's is, in a sense, dedicated to assisting HDR students by running a postgraduate seminar, and it's at this point where students who are involved in higher degree by research programs get to share some of their research results with a larger audience, and it's also the place where their research proposals are tested and confirmed. Finally, let me just say a few quick things about life at St. Mark's. We are a scholarly Christian community, and so on days when classes are held, we meet for morning prayer in our chapel at 10:30 before we have morning tea. And morning tea is always a time when there's a bit of a buzz around. People gather, share some time together between or in the middle of their classes, and they often prove to be times of, quite apart from fellowship, also continuing the conversation that has begun in classes. And a crucial thing about St. Mark's is that we host the lending library for the school. So if you happen to be a Canberra student studying at St. Mark's, you'll have access to a very fine theological library and, as part of the CSU connection, access to more journals online than you could ever hope to read. So, I do hope that you'll consider studying theology with CSU and especially at St. Mark's. Go well.
So it's back to me again. And you heard about studying theology with David just then, but I want to just say a little bit more about how it all works as a distance student. Presumably, if you've joined in here today or are watching this later on, it's because you're interested in distance education. So we want to talk a bit about that. Now, I mentioned before that studying theology can be a bit challenging, and we've prepared this book called God by Degrees, which is available from our St. Mark's office for just $15, including postage, and it takes you through what it's like to study theology, what you can expect, both in the sort of theoretical sense and also in practical ways of what sorts of assignments and so on are necessary. But theology is like, it is part of the School of Theology, part of the university, as David said, and so it's like all academic disciplines. We expect the study to be rigorous. You have to undertake research. You have to know how to reference well, to make sure that when you use other people's ideas, that's acknowledged. You are always going to be faced with lots of different ideas so that you can test your own assumptions. There will be a lot of reading that's required, and you'll be analysing new ideas and trying to express them in assignments and so on. But the thing that's different about theology in relation to other academic disciplines is that it is often speaking about and thinking about things that are completely relevant to your deepest beliefs and your deepest senses of faith and practice. When I first started studying theology, I just finished 4 years of a degree in applied science in speech pathology, and it amazed me as I began to do my assignments in theology how it really meant a great deal to me what I was saying and what I was thinking about. Unlike although I'd been interested in speech pathology, it didn't have that personal aspect to it. So theology combines faith and life and thought and study in a way that probably most other academic disciplines don't. But what can we say about learning online? Well, CSU does function almost fully online. So obviously if you're going to be doing a course through the St. Mark's site, it'll be a little bit different, but I'm wanting to just talk specifically here about studying theology online through the School of Theology at Sturt University. You would be applying online and enrolling in your subjects. You have online subject outlines and subject sites, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. As David mentioned, we have lectures that are recorded and delivered live online. There are forums that students can interact with each other. You can often get links to online reading materials, journals and other readings, and also the other things that are relevant for your subject that you're learning. You'll be submitting assignments online and receiving them back online. And if you want to apply for special consideration because you need to get extensions, or you've had some problem that's affecting your study, or if you want to get a leave of absence for a semester, all of that is done online as well. And the other thing to say is that CSU is actually, because it is so focused on online education, it's very well set up for that in terms of providing workshops for study skills, for using computers, all sorts of things like that. And once you're enrolled, you'd have access to a lot of those. This is just an image of a subject site. It's probably a little bit hard to see if you, depending on how big your computer is, but it just shows you that there would be a welcome from your subject coordinator and information about how to contact that subject coordinator. But there's also parts in that subject site that allow you to interact with other students, to receive materials that are useful for your assessment. It would give you the information about assessments and so on. All of the subject sites are a little bit different to each other, and they're all slightly different in how much interaction is required by the subject coordinator, but it's certainly going to be your point of contact as a distance student. The other things that we do to support distance learning is you will be hearing a bit more about our Theological Library here, but it's obviously very key to learning theology online. There you can do searches for relevant books and materials, and through databases and search engines that are part of the library website itself. Quite a lot from a couple of years ago onwards, they've been doing a lot of purchasing of ebooks so that they are actually available to read online. They don't have to be physically taken out of the library. But I am making the point that there are still real books available too, and if you're a distance student in the School of Theology, you will be posted books free of charge with a reply paid envelope so that you can post them back. So it doesn't actually cost you to get books, and we really value and encourage students using good published material and not just relying on free material that you can get outside of the academic online environment. And our library staff are also very, very friendly and helpful, and would be happy to support you and talk to you about your needs on the phone. Also, for distance students, we have residential schools in Canberra. We have an optional residential school for all of our first level subjects, and if at all possible, we encourage people to come along to one or two of those, because it's very helpful for you to meet your lecturers in person, to meet other students, and to realise that you're not just studying alone, but you're part of a studying community. It also helps you to physically come into the library and see what sorts of things are available there. We do have an occasional compulsory residential school, particularly if you're taking a language subject or subjects that require interaction between people, like pastoral care. There's another subject called Theology of the Arts, where we actually make use of the fact that St Mark's is in the national capital, and there are excursions to the museum and the library and the art gallery close by to our campus. And then you would also be very welcome to communicate with your lecturers. As I said, your online subject outline will give you ways of communicating with them, but emails and if necessary, Skype meetings and that sort of thing are also available for you. Now, before you actually start to study, it's important to think about what sort of study you want to do, which degree is going to suit you best, and how you might be able to achieve that over the time that you have available. It's CSU's distance learning is very flexible. It's possible to do just anywhere between 1 and 4 subjects a session, and you're allowed 3 periods of leave of absence during your time at the university as well. So if you get started and do a few semesters and then find you need to have a break for half a year, then that's fine too. But as David mentioned, there's also the possibility of beginning a degree and then exiting after a certain number of subjects. So if you're thinking that might be something you would think about doing, then make sure that as you begin your study that you do the subjects that are going to enable you to do that easily. Just to be aware that CSU has an expectation of the time that you would take per subject, and that's around about 10 to 12 hours per week for a subject. So again, thinking about if you want to study part-time, do you really have time to take 2 subjects, or if you're studying full-time and you're also working, is it possible to do 40 hours of study above whatever you're doing? So think about the time expectation that's required. And I've already talked a little bit about the academic expectation, that this is a university course. It's rigorous. It's not something that you can just do at the last minute. And you also would not want to, you wouldn't be able to learn well enough if you didn't work at it consistently. But it will give you a degree that will be recognised around the world afterwards. And then if you have studied something else and you are still wanting to do the bachelor degree, you can always apply for some credit. We allow up to 4 subjects out of the 24 subjects required for the Bachelor of Theology for credit in another discipline. So you could also think about that. Now today is the 1st of November, but over in Germany, where our church history lecturer is currently leading a study tour, it's still the 31st of October, I think, and that is what's seen in church history circles as officially the beginning date for the Reformation that began 500 years ago on this day. And so I just want to show you a little video of Michael, our church history lecturer, in Berlin doing this tour with students from the School of Theology right now.
Well, I'm standing here at the Brandenburg Gate, and in the background, just there on my right, you can see our tour group, 14 students who are here on the Reformation Tour, and we are making our way around Berlin. You can see the Brandenburg Gate just above our tour group, right in the heart of Berlin. And we're on our 2nd day of the study tour and have a free afternoon in Berlin. We'll have another free day tomorrow, and then on to Wittenberg on our 3rd day.
The last thing I want to say just in this little section is that as a distance student, you would still be considered to be part of the St Mark's community. We've mentioned a couple of times that we live stream many of our lectures, so that we call this a blended classroom, and you would be joining in with students who are in the classroom here at St Mark's. We've talked about the Theological Library and how it's dedicated to supporting students in theology, whether they're studying by distance or on campus. The St Mark's website, which we haven't been able to show you yet, we're hoping we'll get back a link to it before the end of the session, but if we don't, then go and have a look at that, because that is specifically for the St Mark's students who are part of this community, and a lot of interesting things are available there. And when we have public lectures, we'll often put links up to those, and you can extend your learning by taking advantage of those sorts of things. You should also get on our mailing list so that you know what's going on. We have a Facebook page, a St Mark's Facebook page for St Mark's students, and you can go and have a look at what's going on there. Also, we've mentioned a couple of times our chapel. It's actually in the heart of our buildings here, right in the centre of our life here, and we do in our chapel services regularly pray for the students, not only the ones that are here on campus with us, but those that we are connected with online. Each year, at the end of the year, we have about 8 or 9 prizes that are given to students for meritorious work. So you may find yourself one day being contacted and told that we want to give you a prize. And I think that Andrew said this already, but we always welcome students to come and visit us here at St Mark's. So if you do come to beautiful Canberra, which I believe is the 3rd most attractive city for tourists, that just was said recently, around the world, that is, in world status, then you can come and drop into St Mark's campus, which is it's right on the edge of the Parliamentary Triangle, so very close to the centre of everything that goes on here. Now, we're going to show you a video of a current student who's going to just talk a little bit about his experience.
Hi, my name's Kelvin Harris. I'm a student here at St Mark's. I've been here for 5 years. I'm currently doing a Diploma of Counselling. I did a Bachelor of Theology for the first 3 years, and I can say that my experience here at St Mark's has been nothing but brilliant. The lecturers here have been outstanding, both professionally and personally. Any issues with any classes at all that or challenges I may have run across, they've always been open to being able to talk about them, either face to face or by email. I can say that they're absolutely wonderful, and it wasn't a lecture I could say wasn't out of 11 wasn't 11. And it's always been a wonderful place. Not just in the actual the learning side of it, but also as a community. Even after I finished my Bachelor of Theology, I made a lot of friends here, both with the lecturers and with the students, and I really enjoyed the entire experience. And there's many friends I made through the Bachelor of Theology that I'll stay friends with for years. I also thoroughly enjoyed the worship time we had here in the chapel of a morning. Every morning it was brilliant, and it made it wonderful to be able to worship God and to be able to talk about God in the classes, and it all seemed to come together quite well. But yeah, I had a wonderful time at St Mark's, and I would honestly say that any studies I do in the future, in fact, I've already talked to them about doing a Master of Ministry, and they've been great in talking about that as well, not for next year, but for the year after, and how that would work with my employment. As my Bachelor of Theology, I did full time, so I was here at full time study. I was doing four sessions, 4 classes a session, so it was pretty heavy work. But the Master of Ministry won't be like that. I'll be back in my proper work. So, and they'll be very accommodating with that as well. So, my experience at St Mark's has been absolutely brilliant.
It's always good to hear students who've enjoyed their time here, and that's not an isolated case, but we were grateful to Kelvin for sharing that with us. The next thing that we're going to have a look at is, again, it's Michael, our church history lecturer. Because he's interested in history and the history of the church, he is very interested in the campus that we're located on here. This was something that we prepared for a orientation day a few months ago, but we thought it was worth showing you a little bit because it shows you parts of the St Mark's campus and why we think that it's a significant place in Canberra.
Hello, my name is Michael Gladwin. I'm lecturer in church history here at St Mark's National Theological Centre in Canberra. Now, some of you who are distance or online students may never have set foot on the grounds or the facilities of St Mark's. You may even wonder whether it really exists. Now, to put some flesh on the bones of this place, I'd like to invite you on a very brief tour of our site. And as we tour the site, I'd like to give you a very brief history of St Mark's and tell you a bit about why this place is special and its broader significance in the Australian theological landscape. Well, I'm here at the front steps of St Mark's, and I want to begin this quick tour by taking you into the chapel. This is the foyer lecture rooms off to the right and the left. There's classes in there at the moment, so I won't go in there, but I'd like to begin by taking you into our chapel. And there's good reason why I want to begin here in the chapel, and it's partly because our chapel is the heart and soul of St Mark's, and we believe here that theological education is done in the context of community, but it's also done in the context of a community that worships and prays together. Theology is not just an intellectual exercise. So we gather here every morning at 10:30 for morning prayer and sometimes for Holy Communion as well, as part of our study and learning here. Now I'm going to take you up the steps to see our library from our second floor. These are some of our stacks. Our library snakes all the way around. You can see through to the left, and you can see another part of the library housed on that other side of our atrium. Think of this building as a square shaped building. This is an example of just one of our many lecture rooms. This is the Pickard room. We have 4 lecture rooms like this. More library stacks down to your right, and we're coming back down the atrium. So this building was originally begun in 1955. Began as a memorial library, morphed into a training college for clergy, and expanded into a larger centre for theology. And from 1995, this is our students' lounge, by the way. So all of you who come to res schools, this is your space. There's another lecture room down on the right-hand corner there. You can see a doorway at the back. These are our kitchen facilities. We often have morning tea. Every morning after morning prayer, we break for morning tea. We also have barbecues and lunches here in our courtyard for students. So this is your space as students. I want to take you out through, this is the cloister. You can see the chapel that we were just in, through that glass window in the corner. This is where all the faculty live and work and have their being. They occasionally get out. Now in front of our property is protected grasslands. These grasslands can't be touched because they're heritage, and they're the original grasslands that were here before European settlement. So as I was saying before, this site was begun in 1955. It was granted originally in the 1910s to be the site for the Anglican Cathedral that would be built as a national cathedral. Now, the fundraising for that cathedral, and I'm coming to our outdoor chapel on glorious sunny days like this, even in a Canberra winter, we'll break here for morning prayer. There's a little gully where the original homestead was for the property that was here before St Mark's, and this site was consecrated. This stone here represents what was going to be a cornerstone of the cathedral that would have been built on this land. A vast Romanesque cathedral, what would have been one of the biggest cathedrals in Australia, and it would have been sited just up there where you can see that cross at the top part of the hill on this site, the highest point on the land here. This stone here is actually a stone that comes from Canterbury Cathedral. It was donated to the Australian Church by the Archbishop of Canterbury, and it was going to be the cornerstone, foundation stone for the cathedral that was going to be here. A link with the mother church of the Anglican Communion, the Canterbury Cathedral in England. The problem was when they began fundraising to build on this site, they started fundraising in late 1929, just months before one of the world's biggest economic depressions hit. And so fundraising became very, very difficult. In the end, it was decided not to build the cathedral on this site. The resources weren't forthcoming, and so it was decided that a library and eventually a theological centre would be built here. Now this land, there's some building work going on here at the moment. This land is prime land right in the heart of the national capital. We're just off Kings Avenue and not far from Parliament House in what's called the Parliamentary Circle, or the Parliamentary Key Triangle. And I'm just coming through what is something of a modern day cloister. It feels like a cloister sometimes for the monastic discipline of the faculty and the lecturers who work here. All your lecturers and faculty are housed in this building here. Now I'm going to head across the car park and on our right you'll come to a library, which is one of the biggest libraries in the Southern Hemisphere. That is, theological libraries. And people come from all over Australia to use the resources that are here, and all over Canberra as well. These are our trusty librarians. I'll give you a super quick tour of some of the stacks. My favourite section is just over here to the right, and that's because it's church history, so I spend a fair bit of my time here. And those of you studying church history, a lot of your books will come from these stacks here in church history of all periods. Some of our new acquisitions on the right, a study space for students. If you come here, you have a space here dedicated for students to study. I also like the atlases. This is another of my favourite sections. Atlases of church history, and our reference section, many of which are now online and accessible through the CSU library. I'm now taking you around the front of our building, down that road and to the left. It's about half a k up to Parliament House, so we're right in the heart of key public service departments, cultural institutions, and the political heart of the nation. Now, this building over here is the Australian Centre for Christianity and Culture. It's built adjacent to St Mark's. This is where we began, the entrance to St Mark's. And the Australian Centre for Christianity and Culture was developed in the 1990s as a centre for research and for engagement with Australian culture, a think tank of sorts and a research centre. We have several research fellows working in theology, ethics, economics, philosophy, a whole range of disciplines. And here is the cross I mentioned before, where the cathedral would have been sited originally. So we share this site, both St Mark's and the Australian Centre for Christianity and Culture.
Hopefully you don't feel too seasick after that little tour. Chevelle tells me it's a bit of a Blair Witch Project look at our campus, but I haven't seen that, so I'll take her word for it. But anyway, at least it gives you a little bit of an idea of what our campus is like. We're now going to have a very short tour of the library. You just sort of walk through it, but here's the library manager telling us about it.
Welcome to St Mark's Library. We're your friendly librarians. I'm Susan.
I'm Sylvia. And I'm Time.
And I'm just going to take you for a walk around our library and show you what wonderful things we have here. St Mark's Library was begun by Bishop Bergman, who had the vision that theology was a part of public life in Australia, and our public theology should inform all of politics. And so St Mark's Library is situated at the very heart of the nation's capital. It's always been an academic library, so we have bishops' collections here. And gradually over the years, as St Mark's turned into a theological training college, we've developed many resources that can be used by churches as well as by people studying theology. We have pastoral counselling resources, preaching resources, and lots of books that deal with philosophy and ethics and issues that are current today. So we continue to purchase books in all fields of theology and history, biblical studies, and if you look behind me you can see that we have a very large collection, over 100,000 items held in this library. All people are welcome to join our library. We have many community borrowers at St Mark's, people who come here and spend their day off sitting here researching. Not necessarily people who are studying here. We have ministers, priests, we even have an Orthodox priest studying here at the moment, and people see it as a refuge, and if you have a look around you'll see it's a quiet place where people can reflect and take time out of their busy lives. We welcome the community. They can take out a membership here for a very small fee, and they can use the electronic resources that we've got while we're here in the library. Now I'm just going to walk you down through the library and you can see some of the aspects as I walk along. So this is our open collection, and you can see here it covers many areas of church life. If we come around the corner, here's our reading room for people to sit and work quietly. We're now in the rare book room, and I thought I'd bring you here and show you some of our treasures. We have the Bible Society collection here, with a fabulous collection of 15th, 16th and 17th century Bibles displayed on the shelves here. We also have a collection of Indigenous scriptures. The Bible Society over the years have collected the earliest translations of Aboriginal languages into a printed form, and we have all of those on our shelves in our rare book room. We also have our own rare book collection, and we have the Tippett collection, and many people from the wider community come and ask to see resources from the Tippett collection. Alan Tippett was a missionary, and he was an anthropologist, and he collected papers and books from all over the Pacific region. The Faison and Howe papers are the most important papers relating to very early Aboriginal history, and we hold them here in this library. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in our wonderful library soon.
I'm just going to take you through now some of our permanent faculty. The School of Theology has, and St Mark's RTO uses some sessional lecturers, but we do have some that are regular that you'll come across as you study here. So here's Andrew Cameron, who you've already met. It's a nice photo of him though, without the earphones on. And he teaches in ethics, as well as being responsible for the higher degrees. Jane Fulcher is one of our theologians here, teaching in practical theology and systematic theology. Dr. David Neville, you've already met, as well as being the head of school, he lectures in New Testament studies. Peter Pocock was or it still is, the course coordinator for the School of Theology. He's actually just been accepted another position in the university for the faculty, but he is still will be teaching a little bit in our school as well. Dr. Jeff Broughton is based in Sydney but comes down to Canberra for a couple of days each week to teach some of our systematic theology, and he also does some of our RTO courses. He's an Anglican priest in Sydney. Reverend Dr. Ian Coots is based here in Canberra and teaches in practical theology and some systematic theology as well, and he works with the Anglican organisation here in Canberra. Dr. Bernard Doherty, as well as being the assistant course director in the School of Theology, teaches in the area of church history, and one of the lectures that he's recently done is New Religious Movements, Cults and Sects. So he's an expert in all of those marginal parts of Christian, of religion. Dr. Michael Gladwin, you've seen a couple of times, lecturer in church history, and he also edits our journal that is run out of St Mark's called St Mark's Review, an internationally recognised journal. There's me, you've already met me. I lecture in Old Testament. And then in our graduate diploma for Ageing and Pastoral Studies, this is Elizabeth Pringle who coordinates that program. She's actually based in Sydney but comes from time to Canberra too. And then Nikki Locke, also based in Sydney, is the coordinator of the graduate diploma and masters in pastoral counselling. So the other thing that we wanted to just mention to you today is that you may just want to have a taste for theology. This is something that David Neville spoke about earlier, and that you may be wanting to just try and audit a subject to start off with, or take one subject that could later on be credited to a course if you decide to continue on. So auditing is one option. You can listen to the lectures. You don't actually have to do the assignment work, but you can be a participant in the class. And we have, as David mentioned, two options. You can audit formally through CSU, or you can have a slightly cheaper option if you're based near Canberra by auditing as an on-campus student. You have your library membership included in that, and you get to participate in the classes. And then the single subject, which is run through CSU, gives some flexibility, because you may find that there's a particular subject at a higher level, say in the course, which you're very interested in, but you don't have time to do a whole degree. You can take that course. You get access to all of the subject site material that I spoke about before, and as well as the library membership. And you would have access to the CSU library and all of its links and so on. You would do assignments if you're doing a single subject, and you'd be credited for that study, and that subject could be credited to another degree, as I said. So in our on-campus classes, we want to encourage people to come along to audit perhaps the Introduction to Christian Theology class that's going to be taught on, is it Wednesday evenings or Tuesday evenings? On Tuesday evenings from the end of February. And then we have a couple of other entry-level classes that might be interested for auditing. The Rise of Christianity with Michael Gladwin, the church historian. That's going to be on a Tuesday morning. And we have Liturgical Theology being taught by Jane Fulcher. That will be on a Thursday morning. So this is about how worship varies amongst different traditions, and why it's important to think about how worship is structured. And then there's the Introduction to Old Testament that's going to be taught on a Thursday afternoon. So you'd be very welcome, if you're interested, to contact us about auditing any of those classes. So now that's the end of what we've planned to present, although I think we do have our website up, and we're going to just get that organised so that Andrew can speak through that again. But if you have any questions about anything that we've talked about today, please put them into that chat box, the question and answer box, or the general chat box, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Well, hello again, everyone. Here I am with my Daggy headphones. Just a quick look at our website. Firstly, if you go to the homepage, you'll see lots of choices. Just go to our courses, and you'll see these two tabs: vocational and educational training courses, and undergraduate and postgraduate courses. I'm just going to quickly add a little bit of a comment to what Jeanette ended with on subjects you can do singly. Coming up over the summer, course in homiletics, which is all about how to preach, and a course in world religions, and it's a subject in world religion. It's not too late to sign up for either of those. But going back to the two tabs, vocational and educational training, I'm clicking this time. you can see a description of all of the courses that I mentioned earlier. One that I didn't mention is a very short course we have on managing church finances. We realise this is something that a lot of people struggle with, so you might like to dip your toe in the water with us with that very brief 2-day course. The Diploma of Counselling I mentioned, and the Graduate Diploma of Relationship Counselling were the two that I mentioned together. The entry-level course that I mentioned is the Diploma of Christian Ministry and Theology, and this advanced diploma is for people seeking ordination, as you can see from the picture there. So that's just a quick glance at our webpage, and I do hope you'll explore it when we're done. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. So we're actually at about the time that we were intending to finish, but we have time for any questions if there are any. I might pause or stop the recording now, but please feel free to ask a question.